Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Java tutorial for tutorialmode.com. Today we'll be covering, hang on a second, let's go to the website, go to Java. Today we'll be covering loops, functions and if statements. So let us get started. You can find this tutorial at tutorialmode.com/basics/Java. So loops. What are loops? Loops are basically commands which will be repeated a number of times inside your code. Why is this useful? Well, for example, if you want to count how many characters there are in a string and you don't want to use the function which is there, you can simply do or use a loop and continue the loop until the function or till the loop is finished. Okay, so you can see here the example code. So there's three types of loops Java has: a while loop, a do while loop, a for loop, and that's pretty much it. So the while loop, what exactly is it? The while loop can have a multiple of operators, as you can see here. So this while loop here is not going to end until I is greater than 10. What it does each time it goes around is system.out.println. So it's going to print I, which is the number or the count, all the way around. The next one is a do while loop, which is a lot like a while loop. The only difference is you put the while down here and you put the do up here. It's pretty much the same thing. While loops can also have booleans inside them, so they can continue until they're true or false. Also, what's very important about the while loop is you must ensure you've got an increment variable inside of it. So see the way I said int I equals 0 here, and then while bracket I is less than 10, and then here you got system out, and then you got I plus plus. What basically that's going to do is each time the loop happens, it's going to increment or add 1 to the I. If you don't have this, the loop will turn into an infinite loop, and it will continue for about 4 billion times or something crazy like that. And your computer will not be able to handle that. So if that ever happens, just remember press Control C. I think that's what it is. Control C will quit the terminal or command prompt or the window you're using to run this program. Okay, next is the do while, which we've already covered. It's pretty straightforward, kind of the same thing. Okay, the last one is the for loop. The for loop is only different loop compared to the while loop. As you can see here, the variables and the conditions and the operators and the increment is all in this one set of bracket. So first we have to declare a variable. So int I is equal to 0. So that's saying that I is equal to 0. I less than 10, which means the loop will continue until I is greater than 10. And then I plus plus or I increment, which means that I will increase each time the loop goes round. And system printout here will continue. Now there's only one disadvantage. You cannot use booleans with this. You must use numbers. Numbers are the only option. Or integers to be more specific. So you can read the rest here. It's just a deeper explanation to each loop and what exactly they can do. I'm just going to cover this here. See I plus plus, which I have here. There's another way you can write it. I equals I plus 1. Those two are the exact same. If you want to decrement or minus, you can go I minus minus or I equals I minus 1, which is pretty much the same thing. If you want, actually I'll cover that later with if statement, I'm just thinking there. So anyway, next is functions and if statements. Okay, so a function is like a snippet of code you place in your code. If you want to, for example, see the way we always say system.out.println, that there is a function. So somewhere inside the Java SDK or API, there is a bunch of code written out just for that function there. So let's say we want to say hello world, but we want it in a separate piece of code. Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write an example piece of code here. So new file, save as, call it test.java. I'll save this to desktop. Test.java. Okay, so public class test, public static void main. Oops. Okay, then uppercase S, string, these two here, args, close. Okay, so let's do a function. Okay, so functions are not inside the main. They are separate pieces of code and must be put together outside of the main. So here we go. Every function which is inside this class here must have public static at the start. We'll be covering different types of functions in the future, but for right now, just only worry about public static functions. So this here is going to be a void, which means it's not going to return anything. We can put an integer there, a string, a character there instead of a void, which will basically return an integer if it's an integer function. So it could be int or function integer add, then takes in two numbers, so that could be I and x, adds them together, and then returns I. I'll write down an example in a second. So this is going to be, we'll call it print, and you must have two brackets to declare that it's a function. Okay, so system dot out dot print ln hello world. Simple. Okay, so I'm going to say print and this here. What's going to happen now is it's going to print hello world. So cd desktop c test. Okay, just checking now, compiling. No errors, good. So next is test. It says hello world. It's supposed to be hello world, but doesn't really matter. Okay, next I'm going to do another function, one I was talking about a few minutes ago. So public static int add. Okay, it's going to take in integer I. Actually, we'll call it value 1. Okay, and integer value 2. Okay, right, so return value 1. Okay, so value 1 is going to receive the answer to these two numbers. So value 1 plus value 2. So what's going to happen here is when the user puts this into their main, so add, let's say 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are going to be added together, and the answer, which is going to be 3, is going to be placed into value 1, and that's going to be returned. So we're going to go, let's say integer total is equal to add. So system, actually a better idea, put total in here. I'm going to put this up here, so I'm going to go int value, place value in here. Okay, let's run this. Okay, whereas, and there's 3. So as you can see here, there's two functions doing pretty basic things. So the advantage to using functions is, let's say I want to add numbers, but I don't want to keep adding these numbers here. So let's go. So as you can see, you can keep adding this as many times as you want to this function, and so on. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Next is if and else statements. If and else statements are mainly used to bring logic to programming. So let's do something here. So let's say in this function here, the add. So if. So we don't. Let's say we don't want the number greater than 10. So let's say value 1 is greater than 10. If value 1 is greater than 10, then value 1 is going to equal, let's say, 5. Else, if value 1 is not greater than 10, then value 1, let's say, will equal 15. Actually, no, wait. Value 1 is not greater than 10. Let's say, yeah, let's say this equals 15, just for the sake of it. So let's see what the answer is now. Okay. Okay, so 17 is the answer. That's because we put 1 into value 1, so 1 in here, and the 1 went here. So if 1 was greater than 10, then value 1 would equal 5, but that's not true. The else statement will take place, so value 1 will now equal 15. So 1 has just been replaced with 15. Then what happens is value 1 will equal value 1 plus value 2, and then value 1 will equal 17, because that's what 2 plus 15 is. So pretty straightforward. Okay. These here are operators. We'll cover them right here, but later in the future we'll be covering a little bit more about operators. They are pretty useful and one of the main core features of logic. So as you can see here, this here is an operator. Let me just make this a little bit more complicated. So let's say value 1 must equal exactly 10. So let's put a 0 here. So if value 1 is equal to 10, then change value 1 to 5. So you see here, 7. pretty straightforward. But if value 1 is not equal to 10, so let's say it's equal to 5, then it's going to be 7. So value 1 is not equal to 10, so value 1 is now equal to 5. Pretty straightforward. The rest is pretty, like, is less than or equal to is pretty straightforward. I think you pretty much understand that. Is less than, and so on. Okay, else if statements are really useful. They will definitely save a couple of lines of code and starting new if statements. So else if, they're basically like what happens if an else statement meets an if statement. It's kind of half and half. Let's say value 1. Actually, yeah, value 1 is equal to value 2. Let's say value 1 will equal 0. And value 2 will equal 0. Okay. See what happens there. So obviously nothing's going to happen because they're two different numbers, but making them the same, and this should return 0. Oops, let me see. So, oh yeah, this here takes over. Because this is the first line, it will only look at this, and if this is not true, then it will go on to the next line, and so on. So let's just equal to 10. I'm going to read the next if statement, and it equals 0. So pretty straightforward. You can come on to this tutorial and you can keep going on with the tutorials. I'll add a few more here,